Okay guys, so today I am doing another favourites video. So those of you that have been watching for a while, you would know that I have been doing a top 10 favourites video for different kinds of books for a while now. Most of them I filmed on the same day, so you would see a totally different shirt and totally different hair because I have got my hair cut in between when I started filming these videos and now. I did film this video then, but half of it was corrupted, so I am refilming today. So today I'm going to do my top 10 favourite classics of all time. So these classics are, some are more modern classics, some are more older classics, some are ancient classics. We also have a bunch of different kinds of genres in here as well. So if you want to know more about how I've separated my top 10s into different categories, then I will link the first one, which was my top 10 favourite series of all time, in the description below, and you can go and watch that and it has more information. In previous videos I think that I have gone from top to bottom, but I'm actually going to go from bottom to top today. Like I said, today is top 10 favourite classics, so let's just get started. Coming in at number 10 is the Odyssey by Homer. This is an ancient classic. It is attributed to being the first fantasy book ever written, so nobody really quite knows when it was written, and in fact nobody knows if it was written by the same Homer who wrote the Iliad, which was written about the Trojan War. The Odyssey is the story of Odysseus as he travels back from the Trojan War to his home of Ithaca in Greece, and it's about a whole bunch of different adventures that that happens to him, and then different mythical creatures that he comes across. I really enjoy the Odyssey. I've read it a couple of times now. The first time I read it was actually for university because I did a classics undergraduate degree, so I read it as part of that course, and like I said, I really enjoyed it. It definitely has fantastical elements, definitely has mythical elements and magical elements, and it's just a really fun adventure story. There are some more philosophical elements to do with deity and to do with the purpose of war and all of that sort of thing, but mostly it's just a really fun adventure story, fantastical story. So that is my number 10 for classics. It is one of the more ancient classics in this list, and now we are actually jumping forward quite a few hundred years to the Elizabethan era in England, because number 9 is Emma by Jane Austen. So I feel like most people probably know, at least have heard of Emma, know a little bit about what Emma is about. Emma is one of Jane Austen's novels. It has been adapted into multiple different movies and TV series, and I just think it's fantastic. I really enjoyed Emma. Read it first for high school. Feel like I did enjoy it then, but maybe not as much as I've enjoyed it on subsequent rereads. I have reread it earlier this year because we did it for my Book into Film Club, and I think that was my most enjoyable experience of reading Emma. I'm not sure why exactly. Maybe I've matured and I sort of understand it a bit more, or watching a lot of you guys talk about it. It's quite a few different people's favourite Austen on BookTube, and maybe you guys have inspired me to like it more. But anyway, I've always liked Emma, just developed a new love for it. So that is number 9. Then we're going into children's literature, because number 8 is The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. This is a book that was written in the early 20th century. Can't remember exactly when, but earlier 20th century. It is about a young girl who is, I think, sort of like 10 or 11, who is a British citizen who grows up in India when India was occupied by Britain, and her family, her parents are killed, and she is sent to live with an uncle that she's never met in the UK, in the Yorkshire Moors. So everything's completely different. Her entire life changes, and it is about her trying to figure that out, and it's also about her discovering more about herself, discovering a lot about other people and growing up. It's a coming of age story. It features other really fantastic characters. Dickon, who is a kid that lives on the moors who she becomes really good friends with, Colin, who is her cousin, and there's a whole other storyline for him, which involves disability and overcoming obstacles, and it's just a really fun book and I just really love it. I haven't read it for a while, but I do know that I really enjoyed it and I think I'm probably due for a reread. But I did recently watch the newest movie adaptation, which was fantastic and has renewed my love of the book, so that's number 8. Number 7, we are now going back to adult and we're going to modern classics, and that is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. This is another book that I feel like most people will probably know at least a little bit about, so probably not a huge amount I need to tell you. It is a dystopian future novel. It is so well written. It is chilling. It is just incredible. I absolutely love it. I definitely recommend that you read it if you like dystopian, if you like literary fiction, if you like Margaret Atwood. Definitely worth a read. You probably noticed a theme here. A lot of these books have been adapted into movies or TV shows, and again this one has as well. It was done, I believe, a couple of 2 or 3 years ago, and I thought that the first season was amazing. I haven't actually watched the rest, mostly because I love the story of the book, and the story of the book is in the first season, and then it kind of, the later seasons are a continuation of that, which is fine, but I tend to be a bit of a purist when it comes to those sorts of things. But anyway, yes, it is a very well written but fairly chilling dystopian possible future type of book. Definitely great book. Well worth a read though. Alright, number 6, we are going back to ancient Greece, or actually ancient Rome in this instance, because we are going to talk about the Heroides by Ovid. This is probably one that most people aren't necessarily as familiar with. It's not a particularly well-known book. It is actually an epistolary book, and it doesn't have a one cohesive storyline, but it has one cohesive theme, which is that it is essentially telling the other side of the story of a lot of different Greek myths and Roman myths. So almost all of the letters are written from a heroine from a classic myth or legend to one of the heroes in that story. There's a few that have companions, so there's a few that are the woman writes to the man and the man responds. We don't know whether or not they were all like that and only a few of the companion letters have survived, or whether that was a later thing that Ovid did, or if he just did it for a few different, we don't know. But yeah, so the theme is basically having another look at mythology and the stories that the Greeks and the Romans were brought up with. So the idea is that it is written from that woman's perspective, and it's usually written to the hero, the main hero, who was instrumental in her downfall, essentially. So an example of that would be probably a pretty well-known story of Medea and Jason and the Argonauts. So the story of Medea is that she was the daughter of the king, and I actually can't remember what the place was called, but the place that is in Asia Minor. And when Jason and his crew on the Argo, Jason and the Argonauts, turn up, she falls in love with him, and he sort of uses that to get help to defeat all of the different things that he has to defeat in order to get the golden fleece. When he leaves Colchis, that's the name of it. When he leaves Colchis, Medea goes with him, and then they don't actually get married, but they live together for a long time and they have children together. He's the king in Athens, I think. She has his children, but then many years later, he leaves her and marries a Greek woman. Now there is a letter from Medea to Jason in the Heroides, and the letter is basically, it's after the end of the story of Medea is that Medea completely loses her mind and kills her children. And the letter is basically saying, it's after she's done this, and it's to Jason, and it's essentially saying, what did you expect? You took me from my home, from my family. Because of you and because of my love for you, I committed all sorts of different crimes and sins against my family, including murdering my own brother. And you brought me here and we lived together, and I was your wife to all intents and purposes. But now that it's expedient for you to leave me and go and marry a Greek woman, you've done that. And you've left me with nothing. So what did you think would happen? How did you expect this to end? And what I really love about these letters is that it in no way justifies any of the story of any of the bad things that these women do, and quite a few of them do bad things, but it gives you another explanation, and it gives you a sort of their side of the story, and a bit of a look at some of the some of their psyche and some of the things that were happening in their brain as to, and their psyche, and the lead up to these situations, and why that happened and why that was potentially inevitable, and how the hero is implicit in whatever it is happening. Not all of the letters are like that. Not all of the female authors of the letters are like Medea, who ended by committing murder, infanticide, or anything like that. Some of them are quite different, but all of the letters are from the heroine of a Greek myth, which is usually, or a Roman myth, which is usually looked at purely from the hero's point of view, and the women are very maligned and seen as, at worst, like Medea, murderers, and at best, like Briseis and chattel, prizes, things that are owned. And it flips it. And yeah, they're amazing. I think that if you are a reader of classics in general, you should read them. I wouldn't go so far as to say that they are feminist. They're written by a man, but I think that he actually has, particularly for the time, he actually has quite a good understanding of the psyche of trauma, and what trauma does to a psyche, how trauma affects people's lives. And he is happy to look at the accepted version of legend and myth and flip that completely, and award some of the blame to some of the men who actually were responsible for a lot of what happened. So yeah, highly recommend. Number 5 is The Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis. Now, in a recent wrap-up that I did, I'm actually not sure when I'm going to be uploading this, but in my October wrap-up, I went on and on and on and on and on about C.S. Lewis and some problems I had with some of the books that I had read in October by C.S. Lewis. I love the Chronicles of Narnia. I grew up reading the Chronicles of Narnia. I love them. The world building is beautiful. I know that it is an allegory for the Gospels, and some people have issues with that, and I understand that. I personally don't. I think they're a great story. I think that they are done really well, and I still think it's a really beautiful story, and I love the character of Narnia, of Aslan even. I love the place of Narnia. I used to want to go to Narnia when I was a kid, so the Chronicles of Narnia had to be in one of these videos. It's a classic fantasy. I think it goes really well in my favourite classics. So that was number 5 even. Next up, number 4 is The Lord of the Rings. So this is the entire series of The Lord of the Rings. I don't have a particular favourite out of the 3. I have, again, grown up loving The Lord of the Rings. My parents started reading The Lord of the Rings to me. I don't even remember how old I was. Very young. And I just absolutely, I'm sure they started with The Hobbit. I don't know the chronology at all. But I just loved The Lord of the Rings. I've actually read The Lord of the Rings so many times in my life that it's barely worth reading anymore. Like, I literally just skim it because I know it so well, and I love it. And I know there are bits in there that maybe are a little bit of a slog. He can be a little bit J.R.R. Tolkien can be a little bit long-winded at times, but I just think that it is the world building is amazing. Tolkien has been attributed as the grandfather of modern fantasy. So if he is the grandfather of modern fantasy, then the Odyssey is like by Homer is like his ancestor. So it's probably not surprising that both of these books are in here. I definitely agree with that. I definitely think his world building is just amazing. He's actually created the languages that are spoken in The Lord of the Rings. You can learn Elvish, you can learn Dwarvish. They're actually legitimate languages. He's put so much background story into his world building. It's just amazing. And there is such a beautiful storyline to do with friendship and companionship and love and looking after each other, and it's just amazing. It's just beautiful. If you are a fantasy reader at all and you haven't read The Lord of the Rings, then stop watching this video and go and read The Lord of the Rings. If you're not a fantasy reader, I'm not sure whether I want to recommend that you read it, because I would hate for you to read one of my favourite books in the world and not like them. But I just think they're definitely fantastic and everyone should read them. So you might be surprised that it's only number 4, but that is because there are 3 others that managed to eclipse The Lord of the Rings, even though The Lord of the Rings has a lot of meaning to me from a nostalgic point of view, from an upbringing point of view, from a family point of view. But nonetheless, I do think that the next 3 books are just preferred than The Lord of the Rings. Yeah, a little bit better for me personally, not in general, just for me. So next up we have Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I feel like I don't need to explain anything about Pride and Prejudice. I'm pretty sure that most people know about Pride and Prejudice. Even if you are not a classics reader, you would have heard people talk about Pride and Prejudice. You would have seen a version of an adaptation. I just adore Pride and Prejudice. I love Lizzie, I love Darcy, I love everything about the novel. I think that it's fabulous. I think it's incredibly well written. Characters are beautiful. I love it. I think it's amazing. However, it is slightly eclipsed by the next book, which is number 2, and that is Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. I actually vacillate between which of these 2 is my favourite favourite Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice or Sense and Sensibility. Sense and Sensibility only comes out on top, but only just by like a fraction, by like a hair width, basically. There's very little in it. There's something about the characters in Sense and Sensibility that really just French kiss, chef's kiss, I should say, that I just love. I love Eleanor, I love Marianne, I love their banter, I love how they are so different and yet they complement each other so well. I see myself in both of those characters actually. When I was younger, I felt like I definitely identified with Marianne a lot. I really honestly felt like I was Marianne in a lot of ways. I was definitely very sentimental. I'm still sentimental, but I was a lot more sentimental when I was younger. I feel like as I've grown, I've become more like Eleanor. I've become more practical. I've become more able to see, more able to put my sentimentality aside, but I'm still sentimental. And I think Eleanor is actually still very sentimental. She still has very deep feelings. She just doesn't let them run away. She doesn't run away with them in the way that Marianne does. She's much more practical about them, and I feel like I'm more like Marianne. I'm more like Eleanor these days. So yeah, Sense and Sensibility only just beats Pride and Prejudice, and I think that's mostly because I relate more to the characters from a personal point of view than the Pride and Prejudice characters. But yeah, both those books are just amazing. And the final number 1 spot, and this took me quite a while to decide, but number 1 spot goes to Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. I love Anne of Green Gables. When I was probably about, I think like 8 or 9, maybe a little bit older, I watched the 1980s miniseries with Megan Fallows in it. I'd never read the books. I watched that series and I just loved the miniseries. loved, 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 loved it. I have watched that multiple times. I'm very sad because I seem unable to find that available anywhere. If anyone knows how I can get a hold of that, please comment below and let me know, because I desperately want to get a copy of it. Anyway, I've read Anne multiple times and I just love it so much. It's so beautifully written, it's so funny, it's so heartwarming, it's just amazing, it's just beautiful. If you love middle grade, if you love classics, you need to read Anne of Green Gables. It will blow your mind, it's just beautiful. The way that Anne develops as a character, as she grows up and has new experiences and has more loving experiences, is just beautifully done. I really adore it. And speaking of relating to characters, I related to Anne so much when I was a kid, and I read Anne actually at the beginning of this year again, which I hadn't done for quite a few years, and I feel like I definitely was Anne of Green Gables when I was a kid. I was such a dreamer, I was such a imaginative little girl. I was a reader and I used to talk in, not the same as her, but I used to talk with big language, and I feel like I was Anne of Green Gables, and I wanted to be Anne of Green Gables, so I don't know how much I was really, but I felt like I really wanted to be her and I really related to her. And I love Anne of Green Gables, as you can tell. So that was my top 10 favourite classics of all time. Like with any of these videos, things change, new books get added, other books get taken away. But I honestly think at least those top 3 will always remain the same. What did you think of my list? Did you agree with my list? Did you disagree with my list? Please comment below and let me know. If you are a person that follows social media, all of the links are in the description below. If you want to find me on any of those, I always love to have a chat, so please feel free. What are your favourite classics? Do you read classics? Do you not read classics? Let me know all of that in the comments below as well. Anyway, that is the end of this video for today. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.